Come on in, come on in. I'd just like to welcome everyone to the faith community. I'd like to start by thanking Pastor Christian, First Lady that doesn't like to be called First Lady Pam, leadership and the community for this opportunity to speak. I'm V, and I just need a minute. So I wanted to tell you all the story about one of my friends whose story is shared in one of the most respected yet debated books in the world. So let's just get into the story. So to give a brief background about my friend, he's a Hebrew Israelite prophet that lived in what is now Galilee, which is located in the northern region of Israel. And he was a revered and upstanding pillar in his community. So one day my friend was woken out of his sleep by God and told to go to the city of Nineveh to warn the Ninevites that God will bring judgment to the city. And we just say that impending wrath was to be placed upon their city because of the wickedness of his people. So it's said that my friend's assignment was prophesied before his birth. Now, my friend did not want to go to the city because the Ninevites, he felt, were not worthy of God's grace. So just to give you a little bit of background about the city of Nineveh. Now, I'm not one to gossip, but I can tell you that the city that my friend was assigned to had a lot going on. They were like a modern day Las Vegas, if you know what I mean, like a sin city per se. So the Ninevites, they worship a pagan goddess named Ishtar. Now, Ishtar, she was viewed as a mother figure. She was seen as a protector of marriage, motherhood, the mother of gods and humans, as well as the goddess of war, sexual love, the creator of earthly blessings, as well as the goddess of rain and thunderstorms. Now, Nineveh, they were a really powerful and prominent city that gained its wealth from different resources, especially due to their location. So what would happen is Assyrian merchants, they would use their routes to export textiles or woven threads. Now, in exchange, they would receive copper, silver, gold, but the city, they were also known for its violence, and it was called the city of bloodshed. Now, historically, the city the city's history is filled with stories of, evil kings, forced incest, murderers, demons, usury, which is pretty much another way of saying a loan shark. So, loan sharks are those people who give out loans and they purposely apply these high interest rates. And they were also known as being excessively cruel to their prisoners. So this was a part of the reason that my friend's people were not fans of those people. Now, taking into account, I could understand my friend's disregard for the city and for the Ninevites. So it's kind of like, does he go against the grain and give God his yes and face the potential of going from being viewed as a respected prophet in the community to potentially being viewed as a betrayer of his people because, and possibly becoming a black sheep because he chose to warn a city filled with a band of convicted murderers and people that him and his people did not feel were worthy of God's grace. So that is a lot to consider. So even though the circumstances weren't the best, I will admit, I was really sad and disappointed to hear that my friend told God no. So I'll continue on with the story. In hopes of escaping God, my friend went down to the port of Joppa. He paid his fare. He onboards this ship. In hearing this part of the story, I'll admit that I did find it a bit humorous that he went out of his way thinking he could escape God. I wondered, does he not know that God is present everywhere? He's omnipresent. So while sailing, it was said that they encountered this powerful storm, and out of fear, the sailors started throwing their, cargo overboard to lighten the ship and began praying to their gods for help, which it didn't work. At the time, my friend was asleep down in the hole, which is pretty much where the cargo is held. And he was awoken by one of the sailors and asked if he could pray to his God in hopes that their lives would be spared. So the crew members, they cast lots to find out who offended the gods. and it was determined that my friend was the culprit. Now, I don't want to take too deep of a dive into the biblical or pagan uses for casting lots, but just generally speaking, casting lots would be similar to us rolling dice or flipping a coin or drawing straws, these days. So the crew demanded my friend tell them the reason for the storm, who he was. They wanted to know his line of work, the country he was from, his nationality. My friend explained to them that he was Hebrew, that he worshiped the God of heaven that created the land and sea, and this terrified the crew. So, and they also wanted to know the reasoning for his running from God, and his reasoning for him running from God, and asked him how the storm could be stopped. My friend told them to throw him into the sea, but instead they decided to just row harder and get the ship to land, but that didn't work. So the crew began pleading with God. They did not want to die because of my friend's sins, nor did they want to be held responsible for his death. So they finally decided to pick up my friend and throw him overboard, and the storm stopped. As my friend's body sunk below the waves, he ends up getting swallowed by a fish. So it's interesting because, you hear about these unique stories of, people getting bitten by sharks or stung by stingrays or something like that. But it's like really someone being swallowed by a great fish. So can you imagine? So you're trying to escape God because you denied your duty. In hopes of escaping God, you decide to head to this port and get on the ship. You find reprieve on the ship, which is short-lived because God causes this huge storm, and then you tell the crew to throw you overboard because you want to spare them because of your disobedience. And then out of all the things that could happen next, when they finally decide to throw you overboard, you get swallowed by a doggone fish. Talk about the best journey ever, huh? So I'm sure that some of you all may be wondering the same thing that I was. What happened? Did he die? Interestingly enough, no. But what took place in the belly of the fish was phenomenal. So during this time in the fish's belly, my friend reconnected with God. He prayed for salvation. He acknowledged that as his body was sinking beneath the waves, it was God who he prayed to. My friend spent 3 days and 3 nights. And interestingly enough, historically, it's been debated that there is some parallelism between my friend's time spent in the belly of the fish and Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection, as to say that his time spent inside the belly of the fish and him being spit out was parallel to Jesus being crucified and resurrecting on the 3rd day. But that didn't happen till, later on in the book where my friend's story is found. So he was spit out onto the land by the great fish, and my friend followed God's instructions and went to the city of Nineveh and warned them about God's wrath. He told the inhabitants that God would destroy their city in 40 days. Now, I found that significant, how that time period showed parallelism with the same period as other significant stories, such as the 40 days and 40 nights that it rained in the story of Noah and the ark. So the Ninevites believed that they did believe God's message, and they took a fast. They put on burlap. Even the king and his nobles sent the decree out to the city, and the king wore burlap and sat on ashes. The inhabitants nor their animals ate nor drank. They wore burlap and sackcloth, and they intently prayed to God, and they had to turn from their evil ways. Now, as a side note, just so you all are aware, the wearing of burlap or sackcloth and sitting on ashes, it signifies a public expression of regret or for wrongdoing, or specifically an apology for lying or telling lies, mourning. And the burlap was typically made of like goat's hair or camel's hair. And the people would dust themselves for ashes, which represented sorrow and or the understanding of death. So God saw the Ninevites stopped their evil ways, and he spared them from destruction. But that angered my friend. He was angry because God was merciful and compassionate. My friend told God to kill him. He told God that he would rather be dead than alive unless the Ninevites were punished. My friend went to the east side of the city, made a shelter, and he waited to see what would happen to the city. So God allowed this leaf to grow up and provide him with shade from the sun, but God also arranged for a worm to eat that leaf in the morning, which caused it to wilt. Then God arranged for this scorching wind to blow on my friend, and my friend wished to die again as he grew faint. God asked my friend if he felt it right to be angry about the dying plant, in which he answered yes. So God reminded him, just as he did nothing to grow the plant, but was angered by it wilting, the same sorrow should be felt for the Ninevites and its inhabitants that lived in darkness. I say, talk about another quick lesson. He didn't learn from the fish, so he got another lesson from God, but still being angry about his mercy. So if you've been following me in this story, I'm sure most of you all have already figured out that the book that I'm referring to is the Bible. And the name of my great yet hard-headed prophetic friend is Jonah. His story can be found in the Old Testament in the book of Jonah in its entirety. It's pretty short. It's 4 chapters. Now, the prophecy of Jonah that I referred to, that can be found in 2 Kings chapter 14, verse 25. Again, the prophecy about Jonah can be found in 2 Kings chapter 14, verse 25. And the symbolism, the dusting of the ashes that the Ninevites performed, now that was said to be by some historians tied to Genesis chapter 3, verse 19, which reads, "By the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return." And that is the NIV version. So how does the greatest commandment apply or doesn't apply in the case of Jonah's story? Just in case you are wondering, and just so you're aware, here at the Faith Community, we believe in the greatest commandment theology, which is found in the New Testament in the book of Matthew, chapter 22, verses 37 through 40, which states, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul and with all of your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the laws and prophets hang on these commandments." And that's also the NIV version, from the NIV version of the Bible. So I do have a few takeaways that I noticed from my friend's story, or shall I say Jonah now, from Jonah, God, and the Ninevites. Just trust the process. Trust that God equips you with the power to incite pivotal change wherever he positions you. So trust what God has assigned to you and where God is taking you or sends you. So we are not guaranteed that the journey nor the task will be peaches or cream. We're not guaranteed that, but we can put our faith in God. We can trust that the resources will be there, trust that we already have the knowledge, the skills, or talents, and know that we are equipped to handle whatever comes our way because the provisions have already been made. Now, another point, you cannot hide from God. And sometimes God, figuratively speaking, but in this case, literally, will send a storm to change our plans. So if you refer back to the story of Jonah, he was in opposition to God's assignment. And when he thought he was getting away, God troubled the waters. And he had the ship that he was on encounter a great storm. Also, God gives us free will, but there are circumstances where he will force his hand and put us into let's say, a spiritual timeout, exactly as he had Jonah experience when he spent the 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale. And usually it's during these opportunities that he wants us to spend that time reflecting. Also, our blessings can carry breakthroughs. Even though Jonah originally traveled the opposite direction of the city where God assigned him to go, in his disobedience, he still exposed a group of sailors to the power and control of God in his journey when they witnessed the change from a powerful storm to water being calm after he was thrown overboard. And the next point, we have no authority to determine who is not worthy of God's forgiveness, his grace, his love. It is not limited to, a certain culture or group or gender or sexual orientation. And God is loving and merciful. Though fairly harsh measures, Jonah did learn about God's mercy because he was spared from death when he was thrown overboard by him being eaten by the fish. And also, we see God's mercy and love by how he chose to spare the city of Nineveh, and because their city repented. Now, in the story, I will say what took me back was Jonah's anger with God because of the mercy that he gave to the city of Nineveh. I believe that this is a good thing that highlights how someone's position, whether they be a prophet, a pastor, a deacon, a choir member, a human being, we're flawed. So that same anger that Jonah felt about the Ninevites being shown mercy could be the same reservations that someone could have against you for being you. So with that being said, I just want to give you a reminder. You are not ugly. You are not stupid. You are not too skinny. You are not too fat. You are not too dark. You are not too light. You are not less than because you are black, because you dress differently, because you speak differently. You are not less than because you are queer, you're non-binary or poor, or who mama then said you would never be, or whatever, whoever spoke over you or your life. You are not that. So do not allow people to arrest you and put you into their self-projected jails to ease their discomfort because you made the choice to live authentically. So in life, we're going to have Jonahs, those people that are upset with the fact that God is merciful, forgiving, and loving, and extends the opportunity to change to all of us. And you took the opportunity and you're choosing to get yourself together. They may not want to see it, but if you still talk to some of them, tell them, watch me, baby, because I have work to do and it will get done. You can tell them that God still has use for you in spite of. And you don't have to explain to others what you understand for yourself, nor what is between you and God. So live freely and continue to be exactly what and who God has called you to be. Happy Pride Month. Happy Power in Pride Month, excuse me. And happy Juneteenth again. I'm Ivey. Thank you for your time and blessings to each of you.